Welcome to This Explainer. Right now, we're uncovering a fascinating shift taking place. We're going to explore exactly how everyday South Africans are completely bypassing traditional employment bottlenecks to carve out their own highly lucrative digital livelihoods. So let's dive right in with the big question on everyone's mind. How on earth do you build a 225 billion rand industry in a tough economy? It seems almost counterintuitive, doesn't it? But as we unpack the data today, you're going to see a very clear, structured path from absolute economic necessity to massive digital opportunity. Here's our roadmap for today. 1. South Africa's economic reality. 2. The job market struggle. 3. The rise of the gig economy. 4. The e-commerce explosion. And finally, launching your digital future. All right, Section 1, South Africa's economic reality, and we're looking at some stabilizing macro data. Okay, this is huge. S&P Global recently bumped up South Africa's rating from BB- to a solid BB. To put that into perspective, this is the country's very first sovereign credit upgrade from a major rating agency in 16 long years. It's a massive signal that the fiscal trajectory is improving, setting a way more optimistic stage for everything else. So what's driving that upgrade? Well, National Treasury data shows that gross government debt is finally stabilizing, right at 78.9% of GDP. And along with that, the gross borrowing requirement is dropping to 380 billion rand for the 2026 to 2027 period. Honestly, it's like the fiscal ship is steadily righting itself. Moving on to Section 2, the job market struggle, and this is where we see a real macro-micro disconnect. Because as we dig deeper, we've got to contrast those nice, positive national fiscal numbers with the actual, harsh, everyday reality of the local job market. You can see this disconnect clear as day in the latest Nedbank quarterly labor force survey. Getting down to ground level, it reveals a really complex and challenging employment landscape. Despite the government stabilizing its debt, traditional job creation is simply not keeping pace with a growing population. Now, the official unemployment rate did dip slightly to 31.4%, but honestly, looking only at that number is kind of deceptive. The real and frankly deeply concerning story here is the massive spike to 3.7 million discouraged work seekers. That's 3.7 million people who have simply thrown in the towel and given up looking for formal jobs altogether. And this reality hits absolutely hardest for the youth. We're talking unemployment skyrocketing up to somewhere between 62 and 64%. When traditional doors are completely shut for nearly 2/3 of young people, well, it acts as a massive catalyst. It literally forces them to get creative and invent alternative incomes. Which brings us to Section 3, the rise of the gig economy, a totally vital economic frontier. Driven entirely by that lack of traditional employment, this sector now makes up roughly 2.8% of the national GDP and supports around 2 million people. But here's the wild part. The nature of gig work has fundamentally shifted. It's no longer just a weekend side hustle, right? A recent report shows that a whopping 30% of South African e-hailing drivers now rely on these apps as their absolute primary source of household earnings. For them, it is a literal lifeline. But there's a big structural hurdle we need to talk about. Check this out. 80% of e-hailing transactions in South Africa are still entirely cash-based. That is a stark contrast to markets like Kenya, where they have highly integrated mobile money systems like M-Pesa. This heavy reliance on physical cash really highlights both a gap and a massive opportunity for greater digital integration. All right, let's look at Section 4, the e-commerce explosion, and that incredible 225 billion rand lifeline. So this urgent need for reliable, scalable, and fully digital income is fueling an absolute explosion. E-hailing is a great start, sure, but e-commerce, that lets everyday South Africans completely bypass those traditional retail bottlenecks and scale a whole business right from their living room. And the sheer scale of this growth is staggering. We are looking at the South African e-commerce market growing at a 38% annualized rate. That blows traditional physical retail's modest 3% growth completely out of the water. We're talking projections of an unbelievable 225 billion rand by 2026. This right here is where the golden ticket is. But how do you actually succeed in this space? I mean, with ultra-cheap international imports flooding in from giants like Shein and Temu, you can't really compete on price alone. Instead, savvy local entrepreneurs are hyper-focusing on unique, value-driven niches. Think smart home and solar solutions, which are obviously driven by local load-shedding realities, or totally authentic African-inspired fashion. To win here, you absolutely have to lean into uniqueness and local relevance. And what's amazing is just how accessible these ventures truly are. For example, selling digital products or online courses requires way less startup capital. We're talking often under 20,000 Rand and absolutely zero physical inventory. Compare that to a traditional brick and mortar store. The barrier to entry has literally never been lower. When we peek under the hood at the infrastructure powering these businesses, WooCommerce is the undisputed king in South Africa, holding nearly 60% of the market share. Shopify comes in second at about 21%. These platforms are game changers. They provide a reliable, proven, and super accessible way for new founders to set up shop. And the best part, you don't need a computer science degree to do it. Finally, Section 5, launching your digital future with some actionable steps for 2026. All right, let's translate all of this dense macroeconomic data into highly actionable steps. Rule number 1. You have to meet your customers exactly where they are. And right now, a massive 76% of all online purchases in South Africa are happening right on mobile devices. So the big takeaway here? Your new digital business absolutely must prioritize a flawless, mobile-first experience. If you don't, you're essentially walking away from 3/4 of your potential market. So, if you want to successfully launch your own digital lifeline, here are the essential steps you need to follow. First up, start with deep market research to validate your niche. Second, choose a robust platform like WooCommerce or Shopify, as we saw. And third, this is absolutely crucial. Integrate seamless mobile payment options. Think SnapScan or Zapper. You've got to make it incredibly easy to capture that massive 76% mobile market we just talked about. This brings us to a really powerful reminder straight from the data. The best time to start was yesterday. The second best time is today. Listen, the South African digital boom isn't going to wait around for perfect macroeconomic conditions or magically zero unemployment to arrive before moving forward. The train has left the station and the momentum is already here. With traditional formal employment shrinking and the digital economy absolutely exploding into this space of unprecedented growth, the ultimate question you really have to ask yourself is this. Are you going to take action and claim your piece of this 225 billion Rand opportunity? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep adapting, and I'll catch you next time.